So starting from this course, we're going to be talking about the creating the cinematic lighting setup for this close-up shot. But before we talk about the actual shot lighting setup, I kind of want to cover a couple of the basic V-Ray light parameters and concept. So later on when we talk about the lighting, we have a better understanding of how those parameters work together. So right now I have a very simple scene where I have two spheres in it, and one of the sphere is pure reflective and the other one is at no reflection but has the 0.5 gray for the color, which means the both RGB channel are at 128. It's a good place to check how the light intensity and directional works in this scene. So let's just launch the RT render for now so we can see what's happening in this shot. As you can see, I right now have a V-Ray aerial light on the right, and I also have the GI enabled, so it gives the whole scene a little bit first a secondary bounce, and it gives a little bit a tiny blue tint. And one of the first concept I want to cover is the scale of the light, because as you can see, if we keep the light intensity at the same level at 3, and as we scale the light up and down, the intensity of light in the whole scene is also affected. And also we can see how the light is getting rendered in the shot right now. So we can use the invisible toggle to hide the light, but if we also want to hide the light in the reflection, we also need to uncheck the add effect reflection toggle. So this is a concept just to see when we tweak the light intensity, we also need to take care of the light scale. And the second parameter is the directional of the V-Ray light. As we can see, if I show right now the directional, it doesn't really have a clear direction to shoot all the photons to. Roughly, I mean, because the light is at the right side, so it's whatever on the left side is getting lit. But as you can see in the shadow, it doesn't really have a clear direction where the light is coming from, and the shadow is very diffused. So this is a good, so this kind of setup is good for simulating some kind of overcasting or overcasting sky lighting where we don't really see a clear shadow direction. But as we toggle the as we crank up the directional parameter, the light will gradually focus all the photons into one direction, and as a result we see the shadow is getting sharper. And right now, let's say if we put the direction at 1, it's more of like a very direct spotlight. Another thing to keep in mind here is that as we tweak the directional parameter, because right now the light is focusing all its sort of energy into one direction, even though we keep the light intensity at the same level, the whole scene is getting brighter because all the energy is getting focused in one direction rather than spread apart. So when we're actually doing the shot lighting, we have to play with these two parameters. Say if we tweak the direction, we also need to maybe lower the intensity just to make sure the whole scene is not getting overexposed. Right now, if we want to, let's say if I want to keep the shadow still sharp, but it gets a little diffused towards the end, so we can just toggle down the directional down a little bit. And if we only want this light to affect a specific area in the shot, we can use this directional parameter to focus the light, even almost to use the V-Ray area light as a spotlight. So this is a very useful parameter, and we're gonna tweak it a lot in the actual shot setting. And the third important parameter is actually two parameters, both the effect diffuse and the effect specular. So those two channels basically shows how much the light is contributing to the shader itself. So if now I keep the light intensity at 1, and now if I boost up the light contribution to the diffuse channel, you can see right now in the scene all the highlight and the shader is still at the same level, but the diffuse, aka the color of the shader, is getting boosted up because now the light is contributing more energy to the diffuse channel of the shader, but does not change the intensity for the highlight. If I switch back to 0.5, you can see all the highlight is still at the same intensity level, but the diffuse is the color is only getting affected by half. The same thing applies to the effective specular. We can keep the color intensity. Well, we can keep the light contribution to the color at 1, but we can triple the contribution to the highlight. This is very useful in cases like when we're lighting up the scene. We want to boost up the overall sort of specular light, but we don't want to go back into the shader, or we don't want to affect the diffuse channel, basically the color of the whole texture and stuff. We can just use the effect specular parameter to boost up the light contribution to the overall specular, so we will get a stronger highlight but keep the color the same. Especially if in this shot, if you want to show how the body shade and armor reflect the light, and we can just boost up the specular contribution, thus we will get a stronger highlight, but we can also keep the color at the same level. This is pretty much the three concepts that I want to establish before we go into the actual shot. The first one is the scale of the light, how big the light is, and the second one is the directional, and the third one is the separate contribution on diffuse and specular channels.
Purchase genuine tutorial. Enjoy the question answering from course tutor in the long term. Join the exclusive Facebook group and learn from each other. Also, you can sign up with yihu.com. Search for the course ID. Obtain the full learning courseware, project files. Follow us on Facebook. Get closer to become a master in CG field.